Hello, I usually do not make videos related to political subjects, and this is my second in a series of, possibly my third or fourth in a series of videos dealing with environmental or political subjects. I want to discuss faith, science, and the environment. And I want to really discuss what I believe is important and why it is I believe that people of differing religious and ideological points of view get together to save the planet. That the first of all, let's discuss the scientific view of the planet, the view held by mainstream scientists. Mainstream scientists believe that life arose through an evolutionary process. Most scientists hold to that view. In such a view, there are different interpretations. There are some interpretations of that view that hold that life is a battlefield, it's a struggle, there is no ultimate design, and so every species, every individual has to get what they can. And they tend to go for a kind of Ayn Rand perspective on life. Well, such people are not going to be advocates for the environment necessarily. I wouldn't expect them to be. There are others who go with the more Stephen Jay Gould interpretation of evolution, where the emphasis is on mutualism, cooperation, and the Stephen Jay Gould versus the social Darwinist interpretation will define, generally speaking, those who are sympathetic to the environment, taking the Stephen Jay Gould view, and those who are not sympathetic as much to the idea of saving the environment, taking more of the old-fashioned kind of social Darwinist view. Now, within the religious sphere, there are people who take what I would consider to be the traditional view of, since I'm in the United States, we would say that the Jewish, the Christian, and I guess in the Middle East also the Islamic viewpoint would all define themselves as being monotheist, believing in the God of Abraham. So I would say that within that worldview, within that milieu, there's also a split between what I would consider the traditional view within monotheism, and that is that one holds oneself as part of God's creative plan, and that the human race was created to tend the garden. It says in Genesis that Adam was created to tend the garden. There is nothing about conquering nature and, being the big tough guy on the planet. It states very clearly that Adam was created to tend the garden. And so this is very much of the traditional view within the Western religious milieu, including Judaism, Christianity, and all the Abrahamic faith traditions. So, yes, there is a sense in which Adam is supreme, but that supremacy carries with it the responsibility to care for every member of every other species. In fact, the extinction of even one species at the hands of man would be a grave sin, according to an authentic creationist view. Okay, how different this is from the dominant point of view among, right-wing Republicans. Okay, and many of whom would consider themselves creationist. This is a very, very different point of view. This is the traditional worldview, and it fits very well with the worldview of those scientists who do believe in evolution and don't believe in religion, but who are very strong advocates for the idea that we need to do something to stop the next major extinction event, which is happening now. Okay, it is happening as we speak. So what I would say is that the right-wing social Darwinists. Oh, and yeah, obviously there's the last point of view, which would be the kind of right-wing Republican point of view. But then again, there are right-wing Republicans who don't subscribe to this point of view. So I don't want to overgeneralize, but this would be the point of view within the creationist milieu that humanity is the ultimate thing on the planet. Okay, based on a very grave misinterpretation of biblical texts. And a very, very grave misunderstanding. Okay, so we have right-wing creationists allied with social Darwinists that, well, extinction's not a big deal. A lot of their social Darwinists will claim that's just, it's just evolution. Species go extinct, new species arise. What's the big deal? And right-wing creationists will blatantly violate their own supposed religious understanding and come to the same conclusion. And we have people denying global warming. We have Sarah Palin running around spouting nonsense that I don't think she even understands. Okay, but what about the people in the other two camps? I mean, are the people in the other two camps getting together and doing something about it? Or are they just kind of having meaningless arguments on this particular forum, YouTube, among other forums? The evolution side taking the side of Richard Dawkins, who I suspect personally is probably in the social Darwinist camp. The whole selfish meme, the selfish gene business. I think one of the Enron executives was a big fan of him. So that's not a good sign. And so if you're a progressive or a person on the left and you're in favor of doing something about the environment, he's the wrong person to go to. Okay, you may not like the religious right, but he is the wrong individual to go to. And you are going to be misled into battling against people who may hold religious views different than yours, but who might believe that there is a grand design in creation that motivates them to want to save the planet. Okay, this is a no-brainer. If you want to live, if you want the human species to survive an extinction event of its own making, then you will put aside ridiculous nonsense and listen to what I have to say. And meanwhile, if you are a creationist and you follow along with this kind of nonsense that comes out of the Republican right, then you are violating the tenets of your own religious belief system. I mean, if you believe God created every single species as it is, and you cause that to go extinct, then you are sinning. It doesn't matter if, well, the world's going to have an end times anyway, and that, yeah, maybe so, but that's up to God. That's not up to you. So your greed will be what brings about that end time event. And if God is, if you are correct and everything is restored, well, you don't want to be on the wrong end of God's anger, do you? I mean, that's not very smart. So I would say to people in both worldviews to cut the nonsense and to get serious about doing something. Contribute money to any number of organizations that you can find dealing with planting trees, stopping the fracking process that we have in the United States, or where groundwater is polluted. So this is just, and stop listening to the lies of the politicians, the lies of the Sean Hannitys, the lies of talk radio, and just shut the media off. I mean, if it means not going to YouTube, don't go to YouTube. Listen to people who tell you the truth, like I am now. Okay. Well, all right. Last thing I want to say is that there is a big meme that is pushed in the environmental movement on the population issue. Oh, it's the population. The population is it. Oh, the Earth's population. I'd be careful of pushing Malthusian ideas in addressing the population issue, because, whatever legitimate issues there are or aren't, you got to remember that the whole population thing has to be understood in a broader context. Meanwhile, we don't want to go back to 19th century Malthusian ideology where it's all about the population. And obviously that means poor people, right? It doesn't mean people like you who afford a computer. It's got to mean them. So I would just be very careful of environmentalists. Don't get sucked into that one. Whatever your views are on birth control and all these things, whether you're in favor of it or not, the real issue is the consumption of fossil fuels. The real issue is the cutting down of trees. And yes, there is the expansion of human settlements. I'll agree with that. We can't reproduce forever. I understand that. But the real solution to that is lifting up the standard of life of the very poorest, so that they don't need to engage in things like poaching and the like. It's a sophisticated whole systems analysis that unfortunately the experts are not going to be able to engage in, because big money controls things. So it's got to start with the little people like us. And I think that if the population issue is overdone, then these other issues, such as consumption of resources on the part of the very wealthiest, will be underemphasized, and that'll be exactly what the elites of the world would want. So we need to come together and have a real conversation across the lines. That's the message I'm going to leave with you today. Thank you.